acting like nothing happened. And there was a lot of threats in the home. There was a lot of things said over my sibling and I that I will not repeat, but in summary, words like that we are not, like our life is not valuable, and things that now, me thinking back, is not normal for a parent to say, but I just know that there was so much spiritual warfare going on, because the enemy will always fight against a marriage and against a family thriving, because that is the plan of God, for your marriage to resemble what Christ did with the church, and for a family to grow as well, for the children's lives to be built up. So that is one of the target points, and I saw that growing up. It was always our family being targeted, and this family member would use words of almost like of death over our lives, words that could even, like, thank God we never got to this point, but could cause us to even almost be like suicidal. There were very strong things said, and when there were fights, there were always threats, like threats that we would have things that we needed taken away from us. Just a lot of things that, me looking back now, that when this family member would then not realize what was said, not even recognize it, and then act like nothing happened right after. I just really believe there were evil spirits at hand in all of this. And with all of that going on too, indirectly, I almost became like the middle person, where my other family members would say, oh, well, they react the best to you, Brenda, so maybe you can go and speak to them. And maybe you can diminish them and calm them down, or maybe you can convince them to not follow through on the threat that they just did. And as a child, it was just always so confusing. Like, there was this like madness going on, and then like I was the one that somehow sometimes had to figure it out my own way on how to like calm down this person. And at the end of the day, I have to say I have grace for that family member, because if there were really, like, this is just from my memory of childhood, I cannot confirm any of this, but if there were really evil spirits at hand with this family member, then imagine what internal battle that must feel like when you have no language for mental health. At that time, it was either you were normal or you were crazy enough to be like going to a hospital in an inpatient behavioral institute. Like, those were the two levels. There was no in between. There was no language. You could not talk to anyone about this. And so I'm sure for this family member, there was an internal battle of, I don't understand what's happening, but I guess this is just how it is. And I'm just going to pretend like nothing happened later, and maybe it will just go away. Because speaking to other family members as well, we have agreed that we saw this person almost surprise themselves when they would get in their outburst. They would almost like have a facial expression of not recognizing what they were doing. So all these things, looking back now, I realize, again, there is so much spiritual warfare towards a family. And I hope that if you're listening and you have noticed things in your family that are random times of tension, random fights that after the fight, you don't even realize what it was about in the first place. And there's a common pattern, like let's say it happens on Sundays before you go to church, or before you're about to do something special for your family, or before a family activity. These things are not of coincidence. The enemy studies us, and he has special plans on how to get us into specific weaknesses, and he has tactics, because him studying us, he knows our behaviors, he knows our personalities, so he knows at the moment to get us, and he wants to get us in isolation. So as a child, you don't know how to speak to someone about this. I had no language to speak to a friend about this. I didn't really understand what was happening. And now as an adult, I'm almost 30 years old. Now is when I am shedding the light on this and like really understanding what things were at play, and hearing other people's stories is helping me articulate better too what has happened. But when you're a child, you don't have the resources to know what's happening. And so with children, I also want to touch on, if you are a parent and you feel like you've already dropped the ball in some way, or you have messed up, or whatever you may be saying to yourself about your own children, I want to tell you that it is never too late. Your child will remember you fighting for them. They will remember the resilience that they saw in you. Yeah. They will remember how you apologized to them for things that you did. And when they are older and they are in a bad situation and they need to reconcile and they need to apologize and they need to get themselves out of a hole, they're going to remember what you did with them. Mm-hmm. They're going to remember your example. And just you being vulnerable with your child and saying, this is a specific struggle that I have. For example, if it was like the parent that I had with the outburst, this is a specific struggle that I have that I don't understand, that I'm working through, that I'm praying about. And I'm sorry that I continue to do this. I am only human, and I am laying this at the feet of God. So I apologize to you for the things that I do, but just know that I'm working on it. Just that conversation alone will mean so much to your child, and they will remember that as they're growing up. Yeah. And even if you're an adult with adult children, you apologizing and you saying sorry and you reconciling with them, that all matters. I don't want anyone to think that anything that they have done with their child is ever too late. They will remember the resilience that you had and the fight that you did for them. They are always going to remember that. And with what this means for me now, I don't have any kids currently, but this spills out to everything that I do. The way that I look into personal development, the way that I search for God's word, the way that I search the deepest parts of my soul, the most vulnerable parts of me, the parts that when you think about your 1% that nobody knows about, when you are alone, like your darkest moments, those are the things that I think about now, because when you are around children, you don't even have to say it. They feel what you are feeling, and they echo and mimic what you are. Even if you don't put words to I am anxious, your child is already feeling the feelings of anxiety that you have next to them. And they might not have words to it, but they already feel it inside of them without them being able to articulate it. So I think about all these things that I need to work on, everything inside of me, so like that when children are in our home, I know that all these deep parts of my soul, I need to work on it to be an example for them. And I need to say sorry repeatedly when I'm not perfect. Because if you're realizing for all this, for the first time you're listening to this, and this is the first time you ever hear a conversation like this, just remember, you face to face with everything that has happened in your family lineage cannot be done in one generation. With you having the awareness, it is a lot to carry. You are going to do the best that you can in this lifetime, but you cannot tackle everything. It is not possible for one person to tackle multiple generations of fear and of outbursts and of all these behaviors of undiagnosed mental illnesses and speaking death over somebody else. Like that cannot be all handled by one person in one generation. So as you are the example to your children, it is also so important to build in them that we are all unique in our own generation, and we will always just be better for the next. Yeah. And I encourage my children, my future children, when they're here, that they are going to build their own unique legacy. And the things that I didn't get to and the ways that I messed up that are my own personal struggles, that they're going to be able to look at that for their future generation. And we are just all going to have the mindset of building our own legacy, and also having grace for all of us that are not perfect, but just doing our best to make the lineage and the next generation just as best as we can, and leaning on God to strengthen us through the whole way, because these are big battles. And you are fighting the enemy face to face with this. This is not something that is leisurely done. Like, the enemy is making plans actively as you are trying to break these cycles. So it is not an easy thing, but as a team and as a family, every generation teaming up to say, we are going to tackle this together in our own unique way and the things that we see, and in our own positions. We are not going to blame the last one for anything, but we're just going to look to the future and do our best. That is the strongest thing that you can do against the enemy, because your family is united that way. And everyone knows that no one is perfect, and you guys are all going into battle hand in hand, doing it together. So with this story, I hope that for anyone that has hurt you, that you give grace to them, and that you reflect back on Paul's letter. That was Romans 7:15-24, if you want to look back on that. And just remember, we all have our internal battles. And I don't know what someone did to you and your family. I know there's horrible things done in this world that is unimaginable. Even as a nurse, I have seen horrible things done to families. But just remember that that was never meant for this world, and that God has so much purpose for your life. And no matter what the enemy is trying to throw at you, and in your own mind, maybe mental health things that are going on with you because of childhood things, just remember, God has a plan to heal you. And God has a plan to restore your life with a greater purpose. And I pray that if any of you need to talk through things, please feel free to message me and to message Stephanie, because these are things that you are meant to do in community. That is not meant to do alone. The enemy wants to see you in isolation, so don't feel like you have to tackle this by yourself with no language, with no one to speak to. This is something that we are all meant to do together. So I really encourage you guys in that. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Of course. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You can tell that, I mean, I don't know exactly what happened in your childhood, and I don't know everything that you went through, but it definitely seems like there was a lot that happened, and I just want to let you know, like, how strong you truly are for being in that area and being in that environment, but taking the step to take yourself out of that environment and make a difference for you and your future family. That is incredible in itself. So I just want to give you praise in that moment for that too.
Thank you.
What do you feel as if really made the change to change your lineage and change, like, what do you think was, like, the turning moment? Because a lot of people would just, like, stay in that, versus you took yourself out of that and realized, like, okay, I want to be different. Like, what do you feel like was the turning point in that?
Yeah, so during my childhood, when I described that I felt a lot of spiritual warfare going on and a lot of darkness, from a young age, so from, I would say, like, as a young teenager, I really felt this pull of what I believe now is the Holy Spirit and God putting in me that there was greater purpose for this, that this was not meant to be like this, and that these were just two people that didn't understand what was happening, and they also did not have the resources or, like, the knowledge to know how to get out of it. And I truly felt that God, I didn't know how to articulate it like I am now when I was a young teenager, but I just felt God telling me, this will not stay like this. When you are older, things will be different. And thank you. And as I was growing up, I just felt God really leading me in different ways and showing me how I needed to learn how to break certain things, because when you're a child and you grow up in things like that, you naturally absorb behaviors that you think are normal. And I realized this a lot when I first got married. I sought out a therapist just for myself, because I realized that there were so many things that I didn't understand, that I wasn't going to expect my now husband to understand. And I really wanted to speak to a professional on what is normal, what is not, and for the things that I need to address, how do I address them in a